Um, Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So first, let me try this first, just to make sure that it's work. Okay. So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So it's my pleasure to be here to talk to you guys in the last session of CyberSec Asia 2024. So today we're going to talk about the future of security, future of cybersecurity. So many of you heard about the word zero trust before, I believe. So today we're going to talk about zero trust. Is it really just a buzzword with nothing inside? Or is it really can help your organization? Let's try to listen to this. So who am I to talk here? My name is Songpon Teerakanok. So I'm a lecturer at faculty of ICT, Mahidol University. I'm serving as an assistant professor there. And my area of expertise fall into two categories. The first one is cybersecurity, especially cryptography and network security. And another thing is digital forensics. I do many research on digital forensics, especially evidence verification to help with the digital investigation and also with the legal procedure. So that's all about me. So let's begin this talk, shall we? First thing first, what we're going to talk today. I'm going to begin this talk with talking about the challenge in DFIR, or digital forensic and incident response. So what kind of challenge that we really have in today digital investigation, and then brief introduction to zero trust security. Finally, I'm going to talk about, let's say, if your organization embrace the concept of zero trust security, what you can get in terms of enhancing digital forensics and incident response. Finally, let's say you're interested in this and your organization want to take a first step. What do you need to do? We're going to talk about the migration step, 4 main steps, what it takes to achieve zero trust. So, and finally, we're going to end up with the Q&A sessions. So, sorry, I'm here not just as an educator, but here I will be your storyteller as well. So let me tell you a story, and a horror one at that. So this fiction story called Shadow in the Network. So the story begins with a company, let's say Alice and Bob company. You guys may have heard, this is a fictional story. So you guys may have heard about the name of Alice and Bob in cybersecurity or network security before. So this company experienced a breach. The attacker have highly skilled, can penetrate the perimeter defense. Firewalls make no use in this case, or bypass using the compromised account through the VPN and whatever. At the end of the day, the attacker can get in your perimeters. It's now time for the attacker to move around. The attacker found themselves unobstructed. There is no checkpoint inside the enterprise network. There is no micro segmentations. The organization put everything inside the same network. There are only a few networks inside an enterprise network. So the attacker now can roam free inside this enterprise network without any restrictions. Jump from one computer to another computer, to the server, to the database server, or whatever. Finally, elevate their privilege and end up gaining access to the server, to the critical server of that enterprise. Then, with all this action, there should be some sign to tell the security team that, hey, something was off, and we need to take actions. So that's why the IR team was called to take action to try to save the day. But to their surprise, they find 3 big no. First thing first, they find out that, hey, the organization don't have, the first no is no granular access control. The access to enterprise resources was given to a big group of users, not individual. They not check whether this individual really have the permissions to access this piece of information or not. They gave it to a big group of users. And there's no continuous verifications. The permission is not given by precision basis. If the attacker got the verification for the first sessions, so there's no obstruction for the next sessions. It's guaranteed that in the next session, they're going to get their hands on another piece of information as well. And another no, as mentioned before, there's no micro-segmentation. So lateral movement or moving around inside the network using one computer as a foothold to pivot to all places in the network become relatively easy. So that in the defender perspective, this is disaster. Now, the questions left is that the incident response team can't answer two questions at this point. How many were they? And what was their goals? We try to answer this, but we can't right now. So that's why the digital forensics team come into play, try to piece all the evidence together, try to collect this evidence. But to their surprise, right now they're facing the uphill task, a challenging one. So they found out that, hey, the logs was really unuseful, not really useful. Why was that? Some system inside the enterprise network have logs, some are not. And the log is like a fragmented piece of information, not pieced together. So in the digital forensics task, when you try to create a good timeline from the start to end of this incident, it can't be done because you don't have enough piece of information. So the digital forensics team have to rely on fragmented logs and then some piece of monitoring information that is not complete. So they can't find or can't create the complete picture of this incident. So that looks like a disaster enough. Now, as time goes on, the company realized that the damage got out of hand. So the company experienced extensive damage just because they are not ready to cope with these situations. Then, why does all this happen? The reason is because they lack many things. First, access control, right? No segmentation, inconsistent log. When something bad happens, if they don't have rich information to assist their investigation, they can't protect themselves. They can't recover from the damage. So, at the end of the day, the company realized something. They learned their lessons, but this time they learned it a hard way because the damage was too extensive. They know and they learned that they put too much trust in their internal network. The reason behind all of this is because just because the attacker slip in through your perimeter and can roam around without any restrictions, so they learn this hard way. They learn that they put too much trust in the internal network, which actually internal network is no better than external network. So at first they believe that internal network is cleaner, more safe, but actually they found out here and right now that it's not. So internal network are safer or not? No, right now it's not. So they learn that trust is a vulnerability. So since they learned this, they know that they need the things called zero trust. So there's a real need for zero trust or CT, right? So in US federal government, from the year 2021, they have the goals to increase or improve the national cybersecurity. But if you take a look on the right-hand side, in the year 2022, they shift their goals in terms of cybersecurity toward the things we call zero trust. They try to move the government federal agencies to promote the principle of zero trust security. And they hope that this thing gonna achieve by the end of this year, 2024. So that's the good evidence that people take zero trust concept seriously, and also the US government is one of the best examples, right? So up to this point, you guys may wonder, what really is zero trust? So I talk about zero trust this and zero trust that, so what really is zero trust, right? So let's talk about zero trust in a nutshell. So what we have today in many organizations is what we call perimeter-based security. We have our asset, let's say it's our castle that we want to protect, and then we surround this castle with a wall. We create one entry and one exit, and guard that exit with some mechanism. In this case, let's say we guard this castle of us with a firewall. in hope that nothing gonna slip through these firewalls. But actually, it doesn't work like that. Firewalls, I'm not trying to bully our beloved firewalls, but firewalls is not an almighty tool that will not fail. It can fail. And the question is, if it's fail, something slip in, how bad we gonna fail, right? So in Zero Trust, we embrace the idea that there is no perimeter. There is no boundary, there is no safe zone that's gonna protect you, right? All networks are dirty. Inside network are as dirty as outside network. So if you embrace this mentality, you will embrace the idea called assume breach. We are under attack. It's not like we assume this, we use this kind of thinking just to panic. It's not work like that. It's just to make sure that we not let our guard down, right? So if we experience breach, if we assume that we experience breach, we won't let our guard down. So we will always verify all the transactions, all the requests to the enterprise resource. Let me give you one example, one realistic example. Let's say when you walk into this building, if in this morning there is a news that the terrorists are going to bomb these buildings up, so will the guard check your identity rigorously, strongly? Of course, they're going to do their work real hard, right? But in this case, this morning when you walk into this building, does the security check that serious to you? Probably not, because we let our guard down, right? We don't care that if the terrorists slip in, we assume that who's going to come here going to be a safe guy, right? That's Zero Trust in real life. Now we translate it into cybersecurity world. So you will not trust any request. You will always verify. So that's the concept of Zero Trust. So there are three goals in Zero Trust. First thing first, typically, you will want to secure all communication regardless of locations. No matter you work from home, work from anywhere, your workload is in the cloud, there is no excuse not to secure your transaction or your communications. End-to-end encryption is a must, right? Fine-grained access control, when you're gonna give access to someone, to some resources, did you check about the device posture, security posture? What about the condition? Is it okay for a user who live in Thailand, we send a request that route from overseas during 3 a.m. during the night? Is it okay to allow that request? So there should be some condition applied, right? And continuous monitoring, enrich your logs with user identity, so it can help you fasten and improve your efficiency during your incident response and digital forensics task. So there are many tools to achieve Zero Trust. When I say Zero Trust, I haven't talked about the tools. I haven't talked about what you have to buy, what you need to do. For all organizations, Zero Trust is just an idea. Zero Trust is purely an idea, not to trust anyone. But how can you implement that? It depends on you, depends on what your organization already have and don't have. So if your organization doesn't have micro-segmentation right now, maybe it's time to consider that, right? And what about the dynamic fine-grained access control? Can you incorporate identity into your logs so that you know immediately when bad things happen, what user account associated with this attack, so that we can make a containment of that damage quicker? There are a lot more tools that you can choose, and there is no right or wrong, as long as you can answer these questions. So in Zero Trust, as long as you can allow the right people to have the right access to the right resource, using the right device under the right circumstances, so it means you achieve Zero Trust. There is no set rule that you have to buy this or buy that. It depends on your organization. Zero Trust is a mindset. Zero Trust is the idea of how the future of security should work. So now, let's assume that at this point, you got a glimpse of zero trust mean, right? So let's say if your organization can implement zero trust successfully, so what can you get in terms of digital forensics and incident response? First thing first, before we talk about that benefit, let's talk about the attack, shall we? The lateral movements. Typically, we have in the old model, we have all the assets protected by a firewall inside a logical boundary we call perimeters. So typically, this firewall going to help you filter bad traffic out and let only good traffic in. But sometimes, bad thing can slip in. But how bad can it be? So it may affect first machine, and then more machine, and more machine, and finally may end up compromise everything inside that machine. So if the organization network is like a basket that you put everything inside one basket, so yeah, you're gonna experience this firsthand. But if you embrace the concept of zero trust security, you're gonna reduce the chance of lateral movements. So let's see about some statistic about lateral movement, shall we? So the study showed that 80% of attack times that an attacker they spend it on lateral movements. And 60% of known attacks incorporate lateral movement inside the attacks. And another surprising statistic is that 54% of lateral movements went under the radar, undetected. So that's what happened with the lateral movements. How scary was that? So if you embrace the zero trust concept and implement it to your organizations, so you will limit the blast radius and reduce the ability to do lateral movements. So you will typically consider the use of microsegmentation, for example. So you will reduce the attack surface, you will restrict attackers' movements, and also talking about the containment process in digital forensic and incident response. So you will do the containment quicker. Since everything is not in one basket, you put it in the microsegmentation. So you will take action on that tiny segment of the network immediately. So containment will result in less damage to your organization and become quicker and easier. Now, if we talk about the entire incident response process, starting with the identifications, scoping, the containment, eradication, and recovery. So identification to find a root cause of attack can be fastened using the rich information that we can gain from enhanced log. Since if we implement zero trust, it means we try to incorporate identity to the log, user identity to the logs. So this log will be more useful to you in case of bad incident happen. So you will react to the incident faster. You will identify what is the root cause, what user account being compromised, and what is the user account being used to do lateral movement, for example. Then you can determine the scope, what this compromised account touch and don't touch. So you can determine scope quickly, and then you can do elimination of the threat out of your network. Finally, as a whole, you will end up having a faster and more efficient recovery process, because at the end of the day, incident response is about to recover your business back to work, right? So you try to minimize the damage and try to make your company, your service, come back alive as fast as possible. That's the goal. Those two things that I mentioned just now is the reactive side effect of zero trust if you implement it on your organization. What about the proactive one? If you implement zero trust security, it means you will try to remove trust from your organization because you know that trust is a vulnerability. So, but don't get me wrong. When we say zero trust, it doesn't mean that there is absolutely no trust in your system. It's not work like that. The trust is something, if the user wants trust, earn it. Show some proof. Verify yourself so that you earn the trust from the system. It's not something that you're going to give away anymore. So how can you improve, how can you implement this? For example, you need the dynamic file-grained access control that the access will be granted per sessions basis. If you are allowed to access a piece of information for these sessions, it will not guarantee you that you're going to get access for the next sessions. That's the first thing. And the next thing, all resources that all enterprise resources are not made with the equal importance. Some piece of information have the level of importance low, for example, public information. But for some piece of information, for example, the top secret information, we have its importance level high, right? So you need to match the level of trust. So you try to verify, you try to evaluate user level of trust, but it must match with the level of trust required to access the resource as well. So how can you evaluate user trust? What about security posture of the device that the user used? Did the user pass multi-factor authentication in the past few hours? What about the device that used to access this piece of information? Did the user use BYOD or corporate owned device? It should give you the different level of trust, right? And what about software version, OS version? And there are a lot more that you can choose to craft a dynamic access control rules for your organization. There is no right or wrong. For example, some organizations that have nothing to do with remote work, they sit in the office every day. So why they have to incorporate the condition about geolocation to their policy? But what if some people have to use, for example, the sales have to go overseas to pitch the idea or whatever? You may incorporate the idea of geolocation to your rules. So it depends on the nature of your organization. There is no right or wrong in implementing this. So that's the benefit that you can get from Zero Trust security in terms of digital forensic and incident response. So now, let's say you buy this idea, and you and your organization want to embrace the idea of Zero Trust to your organization. So you're going to take the first step to migrate to Zero Trust. To migrate to Zero Trust security or Zero Trust architecture, typically we have four main steps: assessment, policy development, deployment, and also operations. So you're going to start with the assessment. Before you do something great, you have to know yourself first. What security control you already have, what you don't have, right? What kind of asset that you have, what you need to protect, and what is your business. You will not create security policy without thinking about your business. Because at the end of the day, security is come to help the business, not to hinder the business. So once you know yourself, you're going to develop a Zero Trust policy so that it can assist your business workflow. In one company, there are going to be many business workflow. You may select one. You may not start to do the migration with the highest risk workflow. You will start small with something that have lower risk so that you can gain confidence. Once you come up with a policy, you will starting to implement it. Maybe you're going to start to test with a pilot project with a small group of people, and then you test it, do the fine-tuning, and finally, when you end with the first cycle of migration, you're going to start with the next one. Since you already learned something, you gain confidence. You do it again and again, and finally, you're going to achieve the Zero Trust for the entire organizations. So, lastly, as the final thought, what I want to tell you guys is that Zero Trust is a journey. For each organization around the world, Zero Trust is a unique journey that you have to face this unique challenge by your own, because no one has the same asset as your organization. You're the same business, exactly the same business as your organization. So you have to face this and see what you already have and what you don't have, right? So, but remember this: as long as you can make sure that the right people have the right access to the right resource, using the right device, under the right circumstances, it means you already achieved Zero Trust security. Okay, last thing, let me go for a hard sell here. So let me promote my curriculum as well. So right now in Mahidol University, we are accepting new students in case that you or your junior or the colleague of yours want to pursue master's degree. So feel free to check it out. So this is a curriculum that I belong to. So I think that's all for my talk today, and it's my pleasure to be here.